Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Maple Conservative Girl podcast. I'm Danica, and today I am talking about a warning coming directly from Canada's energy sector. The CEO of Cenovus Energy says Canada is becoming increasingly uncompetitive under Mark Carney's net zero agenda, and that should concern every Canadian, not just Albertans. Because this isn't only about oil and gas anymore. It's about whether Canada is still a country where private industry can actually build major projects. So in this episode, I'm breaking down the federal policies critics say are driving investment out of Canada, the regulations and approval processes making energy development increasingly difficult, the growing job losses and economic slowdown that we're seeing in 2026, and why so many Canadians feel like the country is producing less while costs keep rising. Canada has enormous natural resources. We have skilled workers. We have the energy that the world still needs. So why does it increasingly feel easier to build in the United States than in Canada? And more importantly, how do you build a strong economy when investment leaves, productivity falls, and high-paying private sector jobs disappear? So if you like this episode, please share with somebody who you think might benefit from listening to this. Share, subscribe, and let's get right into it. So, Cenovus Energy is a major Canadian-based oil and gas company headquartered in Calgary, Alberta. It is the second largest Canadian producer of oil and natural gas, and it operates throughout Canada, the United States, and the Asia-Pacific region. Recently, the CEO of this company, John McKenzie, has basically said that the Liberal government's fixation on carbon taxes and developmental delays are causing problems and making Canada uncompetitive on the global stage. Juno News came out with an article that says this: Cenovus CEO John McKenzie is sounding the alarm over what he says is self-inflicted energy crisis, accusing Ottawa of driving away investment and weakening one of the country's greatest economic advantages through burdensome climate policies and regulatory delays. During Cenovus Energy's first quarter conference call, McKenzie argued that Canada's political class has spent years fixating on emissions targets while ignoring the broader economic benefit the oil sands brings. So yeah, obviously we all know this to be true. Oil and gas is the business of Canada. We have the fourth biggest oil reserves on the planet. And Mark Carney's net zero agenda is basically the Liberals putting in these laws that prevent oil and gas companies from thriving over the last 10 years, and has done exactly what Cenovus is saying. How did Canada, a nation with some of the largest natural resource reserves on Earth, become a place where major energy investors don't want to invest here? This isn't just about Alberta anymore. This is about jobs, government revenue, national competitiveness, energy independence, and whether Canada still knows how to build large-scale projects at all. We don't, by the way. The government pushing this net zero agenda does nothing but impoverish us little people, the peasants. But guys, the net zero agenda is more important than bringing prosperity to Canadians, which is why you see over 300,000 signatures for an Alberta referendum. Way more than what was needed to trigger the referendum. So let's start with the big one. Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines bill. It expanded the federal impact assessment process for major projects, environmental reviews, Indigenous consultations. Please. It brings nothing but uncertainty. Investors, they cannot handle unpredictability and uncertainty. If a company is going to spend 10, 15, $20 billion on a pipeline or an LNG facility, they need to know if the rug will be pulled out from under them or if the project would be ended because some Indigenous activist group doesn't like it. In Canada, projects face years of reviews, overlapping jurisdictions, court battles, political pressure, and changing criteria. And at one point, even the Supreme Court ruled major parts of the law unconstitutional. So guess what happens? Capital and investment move on over to the states. Is this elbows up? And then there's Bill C-48, the tanker ban. This one is fascinating, okay? The law restricts large oil tankers carrying crude oil from operating along northern British Columbia's coasts. Now, the Liberal argument is environmental protection. They say the coastline is ecologically sensitive and a spill would be catastrophic. Fine, okay, but you're basically contradicting yourself when other ships still move through those waters. Petroleum products still move through those waters. Foreign oil moves through those Canadian waters. LNG exports are allowed. Everyone else is allowed. But Canada, Canadians? No, we're not. Why block Canadian oil specifically? They say it's because of marine safety, but come on. We all know it's to hinder pipeline expansion to the Pacific, and failed NDP Premier David Eby, what a joke. There's a reason why conservatives, who don't even have a leader yet, are soaring above the NDP in the polls in British Columbia, because David Eby does not care about the people of British Columbia. He's not working for the people of British Columbia like he's supposed to be. Anyways, moving on. Next, we have the carbon pricing. Now, regardless of whether you support carbon taxes philosophically, there's no question that they increase costs. I mean, it's just common sense. This is a problem for competitiveness in Canada. It hurts the truckers, the farmers, but the Liberals, they have always loved to gaslight us and say that the carbon tax, 8 out of 10 people benefit and get more money in their pocket from the carbon tax rebate, which was a complete and bold-faced lie. It was a lie. They were lying to us for years. Canada taxes production while America subsidizes production. Canada punishes hardworking people while America rewards them. And then there's the emissions cap. Because if companies cannot realistically expand production without violating emissions target, then it becomes unattractive. Like, who wants to invest in something in a country that does these kinds of things? Expansion becomes economically unattractive for these companies. And again, the key issue here is uncertainty. Nobody invests billions into an industry politicians openly talk about phasing out. Why are we doing this to ourselves? For Mark Carney's net zero agenda, which is not working, just look at what's happening with Honda. They keep giving money out as in the form of subsidies, and then these projects get like canceled or paused, or the project goes completely bankrupt. It's not just one law. It's cumulative burden. Methane regulations, the clean fuel regulations, environmental assessments, Indigenous consultation requirements, federal provincial overlap, court challenges, permitting delays. Individually, each regulation may sound manageable, but together, they create a system where projects can take decades to approve if they survive at all. So, people are saying, heck no, I'm not going to invest in Canada. I'm going to go to the United States. Elbows up. Elbows up. What the government needs to do, as Pierre Poilievre says, they need to do one thing: get out of the way. We need to take advantage of Canada's wealth, and we need to build upon it. Pipelines, export terminals, infrastructure, major industrial projects. While the government says that they will move at speeds not seen before, that they're moving at speeds not seen before. What is happening? Nothing is happening. Literally nothing. And now you have the wave of an Alberta separation happening. Can you imagine what would happen if Alberta separated? The East can kiss those subsidy checks bye-bye.
We must be unabashed defenders of oil and gas. Everywhere on Earth where fossil fuel use has risen, life expectancies and living standards have grown. More is better for Canada and for the world, and we will keep fighting for it.
And And the liberals will say that the environment and net zero is way more important. If we don't all drive EVs by 2030 and phase out oil and gas, pushing us to not use oil and gas and subsidizing, giving rebates for people who buy EVs, like incentivizing people to go green. Apparently, if we don't all go green, we will all burn to a crisp and the planet will burn. Give me a break. Now, what does Mark Carney have to say about the CEO of one of the biggest oil and gas companies saying that Canada is uncompetitive on the world stage because of Mark Carney's self-inflicting net zero agenda that he is invested in and that will make him rich?
The CEO of Cenovus Energy this morning made some comments. I'm not sure if you saw them, but he said the national dialogue on further development of the oil sands has been myopically focused on the climate agenda and climate policy, and that investors have left Canada for more competitive jurisdictions. I'd like your thoughts, please.
Well, I start by observing the following, which is that the oil production in Canada, largely driven by the oil sands, is at a record high. It's moved up over the course of the last decade from 3 million barrels per day to over 5 million barrels per day. That brings great benefits to the country, but it also is a source of our emissions, is one of the biggest sources of our national emissions. And one of the factors, I'm going to anchor this in the discussion today, what we're celebrating today, what AirAsia is doing, what Tony Fernandez has helped to lead. When you look at Asia, biggest, fastest growing market, crucial to the future of Quebec, future of Canada, is building those links. What they're looking for, and you see it in the choice of the A220, is not just efficiency, but low emissions. One of the selling factors is that emissions are 25% lower than previous, because they're looking for that efficiency over the long haul. And one of the factors, one of the key selling points for Canadian conventional energy will be that it's low risk. Canada is the lowest risk jurisdiction. Low cost, low marginal cost. We are continuing to work on that. And low carbon. And so getting the emissions down will put us in a position. And I will tell you that from direct conversations with a series of governments across Asia, that's what they're looking for the medium term. That's what the government of Canada is working with the government of Alberta in order to produce a comprehensive approach through our MOU. We're making good progress on that, and that's going to make the oil sands more competitive. It's going to make Canada more competitive as part of a much bigger energy transition that's happening. And I can't speak, and I'll finish here, being in Quebec, without observing just the fundamental strength that's given from the clean energy that comes from this great province. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Doubling down on his net zero agenda. They are not looking for low emission oil. Nobody cares about low emission oil. Enlighten me. Tell me what country in the world cares about our oil and gas being low emissions. He always says that the world wants what Canada has, our clean oil and gas. No, that is wrong. Nobody cares if our oil and gas is low carbon. He cares because pushing the net zero agenda, of which he is the architect of which he is invested in, will make him and his Brookfield buddies super wealthy. But Asia does not give a damn. He says they do, as they buy oil from Iran, Venezuela, dictatorships, funding their regimes. They open up coal-fired plants like almost one per week. So please do not tell me that they care about saving the planet. They only care about low-cost, effective energy. They don't want to pay an extra cost for our low-carbon BS. And the Liberals love to say that the Conservatives don't care about the planet, that PP doesn't have a plan for the planet burning. It's such a ridiculous thing to say because Pierre Poilievre is the only one saying, hey, let's open up our oil and gas industry and let private companies build and let's sell our oil to China, getting them off fossil fuels. Let's sell our oil to India, Common sense. We could offset global emissions. But right now, we're importing from other dictatorships when we have oil and gas here, putting pollution in another part of the world. If Canada became net zero, it would offset global emissions by 1%. That's it. Just 1%. But apparently, that 1%, that measly little 1%, that's enough for the Liberals to push us all into poverty. Pierre Poilievre's oil and gas and seaward change plan is better than Mark Carney's, in my opinion, because Mark Carney is basically socialism. Like, his plan is socialism. Socialism does not work. Canada, with this guy as our prime minister, in my opinion, is headed down a really bad path. We're on the path towards destruction of our country. There will be no investment, no prosperity. Everyone will be going down to America. Everybody will be losing their jobs. But all the people with their elbows up, they're so blinded by their distaste for Pierre Poilievre because their TV told them to not like him and that he's aggressive and he's like a little bulldog and he opposes the government all the time. Yeah, that's his job. And he's representing half the country who want him to oppose the government. Like, what? They can't see how his plan will actually help Canada because they've been brainwashed to think that we're Maple MAGA R-word bigots. It's a complete insult to half of Canadians. It is absolutely disgusting. And why is nobody asking these people on the news who say, oh, the Conservative Party is filled with a whole bunch of Maple MAGA people? What does that mean? Why is nobody asking these people who claim that we're Maple MAGA what that means? What does that mean? It is an insult to half of Canadians. It's disgusting.
Now, some new numbers to bring you. Breaking just a short time ago, Statistics Canada is reporting a loss of 18,000 jobs across the country last month. CBC's senior business reporter Peter Armstrong has been crunching those numbers. He joins me now live in the studio. Okay, what does this mean? It doesn't look good.
It's not good, right? 18,000 jobs lost is a bad headline. The details of this are frankly a little worse, right? Because if you look at the broader trend, we're looking at, I think it's 112,000 jobs now lost since January. If you scale out all the way back over an entire year, right? For 12 months, we've added 67,000 jobs. That works out to like 5,400 jobs a month. These are not the numbers of an economy that's getting itself off the mat and starting to grow again. These are the numbers of an economy that's struggling. The details, as I say, are even worse. We lost 47,000 full-time jobs and replaced them with 29,000 part-time jobs. So really not the kind of exchange you're looking to make. It's a difficult time in the economy. Everybody sort of understands that, but we had been expecting to see these numbers tick up a little bit, and the fact that they're down again is just one more blow to that sense that the economy really is struggling to find its footing again.
So, because you're starting to talk a little bit about the Canadian economy, you said that this is not indicative of an economy that is ramping up, really. So what does it mean for the state of our economy right now and what's to come?
So, I mean, what I try to do on days like this is like, what are the other indicators telling us? What's GDP saying? What's business investment saying? And aren't they? They're all telling us the same thing, that the defining characteristic of the Canadian economy is one of weakness. And these job numbers don't just fit into that picture, they bolster it. They really do tell us that that's the problem. Now, I always want to sort of add the caveat to that like GDP, we've seen GDP is incredibly weak, and it's just hovering around less than 1% growth. It's not great. It doesn't feel great out there, but we have thus far avoided the technical definition of a recession and don't expect to hit the technical definition of a recession. The economy is expected to stay on the positive side. Same thing with jobs. No, we're not adding jobs at a pace that anybody would like to see. We're not like, we've only added 67,000 jobs, but we haven't lost jobs over the course of an entire year. That's not keeping pace. It's not what we need to see. And it's this sort of mucky middle that the economy is stuck in, waiting for some of the benefits of the things that we keep saying we're going to do to make the economy stronger without them actually hitting the ground just yet. That's why when you talk to people out there and they say it feels like a recession, they're not wrong.
How are we supposed to build Canada strong when there were 67,000 jobs lost in the last 4 months? These are the numbers of an economy that is struggling for real. Lost 47,000 full-time jobs and replaced them with 27,000 part-time jobs. And the government is patting themselves on the back, saying that they're doing a good job, that they're building Canada strong. Canada is becoming a more expensive country while simultaneously becoming a less productive one. Obviously, I spoke of industry sectors in the last episode, and I keep speaking about it. Lumber, auto, these are collapsing. These industries are going to end up moving to the United States. What a dangerous combination it is to have a more expensive yet less productive country. Across this entire country, people, from young people to middle-aged, working class people across this country are experiencing and seeing layoffs, stalled industries, weak private sector investment, manufacturing decline, and companies moving capital to the United States. And at the same time, government keeps talking about building a stronger Canada. How do you build a strong country if fewer people are producing things? How do you sustain healthcare, infrastructure, military spending, social programs, and economic growth while losing high-paying private sector jobs? I mean, the Liberals are not even expanding pharmacare, even though there's tons of people who need it more so now as they let in more people into this country. The Liberals did not allocate major new funding for additional pharmacare expansion and paused or slowed negotiations with provinces who are not already signed on. Basically, the Liberals quietly abandoned national pharmacare expansion. Meanwhile, they accused the Conservatives of cutting. They're going to cut your pharmacare. They're going to cut your dental care. They're going to cut your services to mental health. They don't want you to get your teeth cleaned. They don't want you to see a doctor. But us Liberals, we care about you. Meanwhile, they're not expanding pharmacare when they have to because they're letting in all these people.
Conservatives never tell us what they would cut. Would they cut childcare? They certainly would. Would they cut pharmacare? They certainly would do that. They would cut every program that exists with respect to youth. They would get rid of the Canada Child Benefit, or very close to that. They don't want to support childcare, dental care, the beginnings of pharmacare.
This is the guy who has been talking about tearing down the protections that we're going to deliver free contraception to Canadian women and free medicine and devices to people living with diabetes.
We are fighting for strong support for our seniors who built this country. We are fighting for dental care and pharmacare.
And here they are, quietly, doing just that. Now, officially, Canada's economy still looks stable on paper. But headline statistics and what ordinary people actually feel are not the same thing. Because people don't experience the economy through GDP charts. They experience it through whether their industry is hiring, whether wages keep up with inflation, whether they can afford a home, and whether they feel optimistic about the future. Do you feel optimistic about the future? The future of your children? The future of your grandchildren? Right now, a lot of Canadians do not feel optimistic. The government keeps saying that wages are keeping up with inflation, like gaslighting us. Are you making more money than you were last year? Come on. It's misleading. And even though this government really wants to, the reality is that governments alone do not create long-term prosperity on their own. Private industry creates productivity, exports, innovation, tax revenue, and high-paying jobs. And what's happening? Increasingly, investors are choosing the United States over Canada. Why? Because America is currently approving projects faster, subsidizing industry, lowering barriers to investment. They want people to come to America and invest in America. Trump wants that, and he's moving faster on energy and manufacturing development because he knows that oil and gas is like it runs the world. And if you have access to oil and gas, then you're prosperous. Meanwhile, Canada's stuck in the process of permits, reviews, consultations, regulations, and delays. At a certain point, these companies, like, they can't hold on anymore. They're going to leave. And nowhere is this clearer than in energy. And industry as well. Canada has some of the largest natural resources in the world. Yet for years, we've watched pipeline cancellations. Under this Liberal government, by the way, we've seen pipeline cancellations, project delays, regulatory uncertainty, and billions in investments that's leaving the country. Now, whether you support climate policy or not, there's a reality here in Canada that cannot be ignored. Oil and gas still fund a massive portion of Canada's economy and the entire world. And yet, like, over 90% of our exports go to the United States because we don't have pipelines. Energy generates exports, government revenue, pensions, union jobs, construction work, manufacturing demand. When investment leaves this sector, the effects are beyond Alberta. It's the whole country that feels it. And this is not just about oil. Canada has a broader productivity problem. Productivity is what raises living standards over time. Countries do not become wealthy simply by growing a population. They become wealthy by producing more value per worker. And if productivity stagnates while costs rise, which is exactly what's happening right now in Canada, people get poorer slowly but surely. And that's what's happening right now. But the government wants you to believe that they're doing an amazing job. Everything's good, guys. We're building Canada strong. Wages are rising at the rate of inflation. And, we did this and we did that. And thank us. Here's a handout because basically we failed. The government artificially raises Canada's GDP through immigration and says, oh, we have a great GDP, everybody. Yeah, but the reality is that we're poor. Canada is in economic decline in every aspect. And Canada continues expanding public spending, bureaucracy, subsidies, foreign aid, and government programs that, come on, are they really working? If you really look at pharmacare, people are on the waiting list for 3 years just to see a doctor, just to get surgery that they need. People are perishing waiting for doctors, okay? The childcare program, it doesn't work. Every single mom that I've ever spoken to tried to get into the program, but couldn't. It was like a 3-year waiting list. By the time you get into the daycare, well, they're in school. The National School Food Program. Do we really need this? Just cut taxes. People are lined up at the food banks, but they're saying, oh, pat us on the back because we're feeding kids at school. Great, that's great. But don't make it sound like you're, solving the food crisis and that you're making food more affordable or you're feeding hungry kids. No, that's not true. That's misleading to say that because in the end, a lot of Canadians cannot feed their kids. So they're lined up at the food banks. 2.2 million people in 1 month. Food banks now are starting to say that people can only come once a month because they can't keep up with the demand, which that is a problem. That shows that there is a serious problem with food inflation and people being able to afford to feed themselves. But the government says, well, we're helping you with this National School Food Program. That's like a slap in the face to everybody who's lined up at the food banks. And governments ultimately rely on industries to fund these programs. You cannot endlessly tax shrinking sectors, subsidize failing industries, failing businesses, because you want them to grow, while expecting economic growth to continue. The Liberals want European-style social spending, American-level economic growth, aggressive climate policy, and affordable housing, major infrastructure, so they say, and rising living standards. Well, you can't have everything. You cannot You cannot have European-style social spending while at the same time having American-level economic growth. You cannot have aggressive climate policy and also economic growth. You cannot have affordable housing while you bring in a whole bunch of people with nowhere to put them. You cannot implement a climate policy and tax carbon taxes and that, and also expect our living standards to rise. All of this just doesn't make sense. All while discouraging investment in some of our most productive industries. I mean, how is that even possible? Get out of the way and let the economy do its own thing. Let us be in charge of our own lives. Let us be able to open businesses. Stop getting in the way. Stop pushing us towards the direction that you want us to go in. And I ask you this. Does opportunity exist for young, motivated people coming out of university? I mean, youth unemployment is like at almost 15%. Does your hard work pay off at the end of the day? They're like taxing construction workers like 40%. You own a business? Oh, at the end of the year, you have to pay 40% tax. Are industries growing? No, they're not. They're not. What people are actually seeing and experiencing are jobs disappearing, housing becoming unreachable, and wages stagnating, and investment leaving. But tell us again how you're building Canada strong. Strong how? They love to attack us conservatives and the Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre for their slogans. They always say, oh, Pierre Poilievre doesn't have a real plan. He's just all slogans. But their Build Canada Strong, it's just a slogan. And slogans are easy. But real national strength requires productive industry, energy security, infrastructure, skilled labor, investment, innovation, and economic confidence. A strong country builds things. A strong country exports things. A strong country produces things. It does not survive on government expansion and subsidies. Socialism doesn't work. The global economy is becoming more competitive, more geopolitical, more resource-driven, more industrial. The United States understands this. China understands this. India understands this. Does Canada understand this? Here we have Mark Carney saying that the whole world wants what Canada has, our clean energy, our zero carbon this, and our clean this. Like, have any countries in the world ever said that they wouldn't buy our oil and gas unless it had a carbon price, unless it was clean? Give me one example of a country saying that. Show me the proof. No, the world is making energy deals with Trump while we go elbows up and look like total losers with a capital L. And look, none of this means environmental protection doesn't matter. None of this means government has no role, but a country cannot regulate, delay, and tax its way into prosperity. Eventually, wealth has to be created by the people of this country. And right now, too many Canadians feel like this country is becoming harder to build, harder to invest in, and harder to succeed in. That's the conversation that we have to have honestly, without being blinded by our dislike for the leader of the Conservative Party. I believe that the Conservative Party of Canada, they are the only path towards a successful Canada. Could you imagine another 11 years of Liberal leadership? Canada would be finished. That should be all for today, everybody. Thank you all for listening. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Share it, subscribe, and I hope that you have a beautiful Friday, a beautiful weekend, and I will see you next time. Bye.